Good afternoon. Welcome to our online discussion for September 5th, 2014. My name is Amy Hasbrook, and I'm the director of Toujours Vivant, Not Dead Yet. TVNDY is a project of the Council of Canadians with Disabilities to unify, inform, and give voice to the disability opposition to assisted suicide and euthanasia and other ending-of-life practices that tend to have a discriminatory impact on people with disabilities. Our position is, we have several reasons for having this position. People with disabilities, excuse me, I'm not quite all here. There are several reasons for opposing assisted suicide from the point of view of people with disabilities. First of all, because it's not necessary. Everyone already has the option to commit suicide and to refuse medical care and have palliative sedation until the time that they die naturally, having refused medical care. Secondly, it's discriminatory because people without disabilities receive suicide prevention services if they express a wish to die. People with disabilities who express such a wish are encouraged and enabled to kill themselves, and we believe that's discrimination. Thirdly, because people with disabilities don't have choices in where and how they live because of institutional discrimination and barriers in society, that means that you can't necessarily have a free choice in how to die. And so we believe that this idea that there's a free choice is really an illusion. And finally, where these practices have been made legal, the safeguards have been ineffective in preventing people with disabilities from dying who should not be killed. The goal of our discussion is to give people with disabilities a place to talk about these issues from our point of view. The media tends to talk about this issue as if it's just religious and conservative people opposing assisted suicide, and then on the other side it's progressive and liberal-minded people, and the disability issues get lost. And so this is a place where people with disabilities can come and talk about these from our point of view. We have a lot of experience with the medical system, and it's a good opportunity for folks who are newly disabled to talk about the issues and meet other folks. Secondly, there are different ways to participate. There's Hangouts. You can either sort of watch and ask questions, post them on our question board, which is on the side of your screen, or you can join us in the actual room. I would if you post a question, I can send you an invitation to join us in the room, so that's another option. And that way you would be able to speak out loud directly to me, and I'd be able to talk directly back. Or otherwise, if you just want to post a question, I can answer that. For more information about the subjects that we talk about, you can contact us in several ways. You can either email me at info@tv-ndy.ca or on our Facebook page at facebook.com/toujourvivant-not-dead-yet. You can follow me on Twitter at @TVNDY, or you can visit our website at tvndy.ca. Okay, today's topics are the dedication of a memorial to victims of the Nazi euthanasia program in Germany. The World Health Association has a report out on suicide prevention. We have a couple of news briefs. One is an article about Bill Peace in the magazine New Mobility. The other is an ice bucket challenge that turned into a hate crime. We have some announcements, and finally I have a commentary, A Wolf in Sheep's Clothing, Catherine Tucker and the Disability Rights Legal Center. But to start out with, in the city of Berlin, the city of Berlin and the government of Germany have built a memorial to people with disabilities killed by the Nazis during the Second World War. The memorial is 24 meters long and made of blue glass panels. It stands in Tiergarten Park, near the site of the former building where the euthanasia program was administered. The Euthanasia Initiative, known as the T4 program, after the address of the headquarters at 4 Tiergartenstrasse, was officially ended in 1941 after 71,000 people with disabilities had been killed, but the massacre continued in secret until the end of the war, and an estimated 300,000 people with physical, mental, and psychiatric disabilities died because of that program in its aftermath. The German culture minister at the dedication of the memorial, Monika Grütters, said that the monument reminds us of the grossly inhumane distinction made by the Nazis between lives that were worth living and those that were not worth living, or that were deemed so. She added that the monument stands as a warning to not view life in a utilitarian way. Adolf Bauer, the chairman of the Council of Persons with Disabilities in Germany, said he believes that the memorial will help us remember the crimes of the Nazis, prevent us from forgetting the crimes of the Nazis against people with disabilities. And you can find more information in a couple of articles on our Facebook page about the memorial. Okay, the World Health Organization, WHO, released its first report on suicide prevention this week. The goal of the report is to encourage more countries to develop and implement suicide prevention programs and to reduce the incidence of suicide by the year 2020. The report does not mention the terms assisted suicide or euthanasia anywhere in the report. Chronic pain and illness are considered individual risk factors for suicide, and disability is mentioned in that section. That's the only place that disability is mentioned in the report. Individual risk factors also include hopelessness, mental disorders, previous suicide attempts, and harmful use of alcohol and other substances. That's some of their bureaucratic language there. Disability is not discussed in the section dealing with society and access to health systems, even though those are very important issues for people with disabilities. And that section includes obviously access to health services and inappropriate media reporting on the issue. And they talked a little bit about how when there are suicides, media often report it in a sympathetic way that portrays the suicide as a positive thing, and that is definitely a problem. But what they didn't talk about is how the media has a very strong bias and underreports the disability opposition and portrays the opposition to these practices as in a very negative light. Nor is disability considered among the community and relationship risk factors, which are talked about on page 36 and 37. And those factors include discrimination, abuse and trauma, isolation and lack of social support. And those are all things that people with disabilities obviously experience on a regular basis and are very much part of the lives of people with disabilities. Nor did people with disabilities make the vulnerable groups list, which is on page 37, which is a little surprising because usually that's the only place we get in. The report recommended intervention for individual risk factors were assessment, management, and psychosocial supports. So that's basically their solution. Though the report discussed the problems of websites that promote suicide, it did not mention the many well-funded groups that promote assisted suicide and euthanasia through media, public relations campaigns, legislation and referenda, legal action, direct services to clients, and other methods. So that was something they just completely didn't mention, even though they were talking about factors that they need to work against. Despite a long discussion of the barriers to an accurate understanding of suicides around the world, the report failed to mention the statistical anomalies created when assisted suicide and euthanasia deaths are not reported as suicides, but as due to the underlying illness or disability. And that's a problem that comes out of many jurisdictions, well, pretty much all of them, I think, but especially Oregon, where the people who die under the state's quote-unquote Death with Dignity Act, their deaths are classified as being caused by the underlying problem, and so those deaths don't come into the state's suicide statistics at all. And nor did the authors of the WHO report mention the failure to apply ordinary procedures to investigate suicides in deaths under such assisted suicide programs, because, like I said, they never even mentioned the word assisted suicide or death with dignity or euthanasia or anything along those lines. This report is, frankly, beyond disappointing. The concerns of people with disabilities were not just marginalized, they were hurled into the abyss. Assisted suicide and euthanasia laws, policies, and proponents are the elephant in the living room, and its big feet are planted squarely on this report. So, as you can tell, I was not amused, not even a little bit. Okay, well, we've got a couple of news briefs now. There was an article in the September 2014 edition of New Mobility magazine. There was an interview with Bill Peace, an anthropologist and board member of Not Dead Yet in the United States. Bill described the events that led him to the disability rights movement and to oppose euthanasia and assisted suicide. There is a link to the article on our Facebook page, and again, our Facebook page is facebook.com/toujours vivant not dead yet. Okay. Also, among the usual crop of people with disabilities who were killed by family members, we had a situation where an ice bucket challenge turned into a hate crime. As you know, for about a month, many celebrities have been doing ice bucket challenges, which is having ice water dumped over their heads to raise money for medical research on amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, also known as Lou Gehrig's disease. Some people with disabilities are uncomfortable with the fact that ALS Foundation in the U.S. only spends 19% of its funding on services to people with the disease. Another 28% goes to medical research, and what's left, which is more than 50%, goes to publicity, administration, and fundraising. So they separate fundraising from publicity as separate things, even though they, publicity is a big part of their fundraising. And they, more than half of their funding goes to those three areas. But this week, the ice bucket idea was perverted when a group of adolescents convinced an autistic teenager to take the challenge, and then they dumped a bucket of urine, feces, and cigarette butts on his head. After this happened, the victim's family decided to put the video of his ordeal on the internet. Perhaps the family thought that it would be a good idea to show how terrible that behavior was, but in my opinion, and many other people I know, putting the video online could cause more trauma and humiliation for the young man, and was a really bad decision. And I also feel that, you know, giving those boys, showing what they did, is going to reinforce their behavior, not punish it. Okay. Okay, here are some announcements. And these are things that I've already mentioned in the past few weeks, but these are upcoming events that are very important. Getting back to the suicide prevention idea again, September 10th is the International Suicide Prevention Day, and there are few suicide prevention groups that have taken a position against assisted suicide for various reasons. Some of them haven't thought about it, some of them are waffling, some of them, very few have taken a position against. Toujours Vivant, Not Dead Yet would like to change this. We encourage everybody to find a local suicide prevention event that's coming up on the 10th and bring your message that suicide prevention is for everyone. One easy way to communicate this message is to hold a sign that says suicide prevention for all, no assisted suicide, with an accessibility logo included, you know, a little guy in blue and white, guy in a wheelchair, that accessibility logo. This message makes people think. Some people realize the contradiction between assisted suicide and suicide prevention and agree with our position. Some people disagree, but it's a good way to start a conversation. So I highly recommend it. It's worked for me. In addition, TVNDY is contacting suicide prevention groups to ask if they have taken a position against assisted suicide and euthanasia. If they have not taken a position, we ask why and send a letter asking them to take a stand. If they have decided not to oppose life-ending practices, we ask for a meeting with their board of directors. So that's an initiative. It's ongoing at the moment. Okay, on the 17th of September, the World Federation of Right the Final Exit Network in the U.S. will welcome the 20th Conference of the World Federation of Right to Die Societies in Chicago. The actual conference is from the 18th to the 20th. The people will be arriving on the 17th. Véronique Yvon and others will be coming from Canada to speak to the delegates about passing the Quebec bill and current events in Canada. So there would be a Carter case that's being heard on the 14th. Or 15th, actually, got moved back a day. The 15th of October, the case challenging the Quebec statute, the Fletcher bill, and other matters. Not Dead Yet, Toujours Vivant, Not Dead Yet, and Nick Steenhout will be in Chicago, along with Not Dead Yet US, to provide the disability rights point of view on what's happening in Quebec and Canada. So Véronique Yvon will not go unanswered in French. So there will be French press around to speak to people, and we'll be there to respond. If you'd like to attend, email me as soon as possible at tigrlily61@gmail.com or info@tv-ndy.ca. Okay. More announcements. TVNDY and the Euthanasia Prevention Coalition are organizing a luncheon for members of Parliament on October 2nd. The event will educate MPs about the perspective of people with disabilities who oppose the medical aid in dying bill that was introduced by Stephen Fletcher last spring. He's pretty much had the undivided attention of the press, and even though there have been events where other people have opposed him, such as the hearing at the Senate last spring, the press did not take advantage of the opportunity to speak to those of us who spoke against the bill. So we want to share the disability rights perspective with the MPs. Speakers will include Dave Hingsberger from Toronto, Dr. Bonita Sawatsky from British Columbia, Catherine Frazee from Nova Scotia, Nick Steenhout from Montreal, and others. And if you want to have a message, if you have a message you'd like to send to the MPs, or if you'd like to attend, you can send your message by email, or you can contact me at info@tv-ndy.ca, and I will read your message, or we can arrange for you to be there on the 2nd. The next day, October 3rd, people with disabilities will hold a meeting to discuss strategy to deal with current events in Canada around assisted suicide. The meeting will be based on the Disability Rights Leadership Institute on Bioethics held in Washington, D.C. in April of this year. We'll talk about organizing the disability community, how to change media bias, and legal and legislative options, including, for example, using this the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities as a possible wedge. People with disabilities are absolutely welcome, and if you want to attend, please email me as soon as possible. Finally, I have a commentary which is based on another bit of news. And the commentary is called Wolf in Sheep's Clothing. Catherine Tucker joins the Disability Rights Legal Center. Catherine Tucker is the former Legal Affairs Director at the pro-assisted suicide group Compassion and Choices. This week she learned that Ms. Tucker has been hired as Director of the Disability Rights Legal Center in California. But don't think that she's had an epiphany and seen the error of her ways. She will be making a speech at the World Federation of Right to Die Society's meeting this month. Given that all major disability rights groups, run by people with disabilities anyway, oppose assisted suicide, we wonder what disability rights Ms. Tucker thinks she's defending. Looking at the center's website, we can find some clues. First of all, there's no indication that the board members have, that any of the board members or a majority of the board members have disabilities. Certainly nobody, anyway, there's no indication one way or the other. They all seem to come from prestigious law firms, not community or disability groups. The website has no accessibility features, or doesn't appear to. The group does not seem to have links with the Federal Protection and Advocacy Program, which funds local groups to provide legal help to people with disabilities. The sample letters and other materials to use in contacting legislators refer to bills for funding cancer research, which is not a disability rights issue I've ever heard any disability group prioritizing. I've never heard of it as a disability rights issue. Disability rights activists who oppose assisted suicide believe that this may be the equivalent of a hostile takeover by Compassion and Choices of an existing group. In a cynical effort to create a veneer of legitimacy to promote CNC's lies about assisted suicide being a choice and a matter of autonomy for people with disabilities. So those of us who work in this area are monitoring the events, and we are preparing a response. So in order to reach us, if you have questions or want more information, there are lots of ways to contact us. First is we have a website, which is tvndy.ca. You can reach us at, you can follow me on Twitter, which is @TVNDY. You can go to our Facebook page at facebook.com/toujours vivant, not dead yet. Or you can email me either at my personal email address at tigrlily61@gmail.com or at info@tv-ndy.org. You can also go to our website and find past editions of our online discussions. If you will probably be moving these soon, but if you go to the calendars on or before the end of June, you'll be able to see on Friday afternoons the link to the discussion, so you can find those there. And in the next few weeks, obviously, I'm going to be in and out doing different things, but I will try to have an online discussion, if only a short one, every week to highlight what's going on. These discussions are more interesting when people can join us and ask questions. So I invite people to participate and ask questions. Unfortunately, no one has asked any questions. That's too bad. But I welcome people to come, and please spread the word. So please feel free to come back next week. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great week. Goodbye.